I want to talk about a topic that we have spoken about before numerous times from different angles. But today it seems very appropriate because it relates very directly to the Parsha of the week. And we know that we have a ruling, a cloud from Alten Rebbe, that we have to draw directives and insights, practical insights from the Parsha of the week. The Parsha of the week is Parsha Massey. Massey means journeys. And as surely you know, that right in the beginning of the Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu recounts 42 different steps that Eden took during their journey from Mitzrayim till the end of their journey in the desert by the Yarden, where they were ready to cross the Yarden to enter Eretz Yisrael. The Baal Shem Tov says that these 42 journeys that Eden took in the desert are really hints or indicators to every individual person that everyone goes through 42 different journeys, different trips in his life to get to the point where he wants to go, where he has to go to. What was in fact taking place in these journeys? The aim of the Yidden was at first to leave Mitzrayim, to get out of bondage, then to receive the Torah, then to go towards Eretz Yisrael. And what the Torah is telling us is that there are 42 different steps, major steps in this journey. What makes them major steps? What makes a step major is that, and when one reaches a certain step, it appears to him that he has already accomplished his aim. He needs not to go any further. He already reached the place where he wanted to go, which in fact is true. From the place that he left originally, and he came to this place, in fact, he has reached his goal. When Eden were in bondage, in Mitzrayim, what was their only hope? What was their wish? Their wish was to get out of the bondage in Mitzrayim. Be free. The Gemara gives a moshel, an illustration of the mindset of the Eden in Mitzrayim. When Moshe Rabbeinu came to them and he said, we're going to be leaving Mitzrayim soon, but before that, remember, you have to go and collect the valuables that Hashem promised to Avram. Do you know the story, or shall I briefly tell you? When Avram, the bondage in Mitzrayim was something that Hashem had actually decreed yet in the time of Avram Avinu. And there was what's called a krisis bris. Hashem made a covenant with Avram. And he said to him that this land, Eretz Canaan, is yours. However, before you children get it, they will go through a whole slew of different journeys. And one of them is going to be that they're going to be in bondage, in heavy bondage. But afterwards, I will take them out from this bondage, and as the expression is there, Yetzu birchush gode. They will come out with great wealth. And as it were, that when Eden left Mitzrayim, they were very wealthy. They carried a tremendous amount of wealth. How did they get this wealth? Hashem made it that the Egyptians, towards the end of the Jewish stay in Mitzrayim, had a very favorable disposition to the Eden. And they bestowed upon them. The Eden were leaving. They even asked them for various things. They bestowed upon them all kinds of riches. And the Eden came out with tremendous wealth. And Moshe Rabbeinu told the Eden, we have to take the time to go and collect these riches, because this is what Avraham Avinu was promised, and Hashem wants to keep His promise. So the Eden said to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said, we are ready, we are willing to forego the riches, just get us out of here. Because when a person is in the state of bondage in Mitzrayim, his only wish, he's only concerned about his immediate suffering. It's so overwhelming that he cannot think of anything else. And therefore all he wants is get out of here. And as soon as they left Mitzrayim, and they came, whatever the first, I think Yam Suf, the first camp, the first encampment outside of Mitzrayim, they already felt they have accomplished, they have gotten what they were looking for. And then it was a complete new decision. But yes, we've gotten out of there, but this is not the end where we're trying to go. Just to be free of Mitzrayim, but not to have, as it goes on, because after that there was Kriyas Yamsuf. So it even were explained that the fact that you are now out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt, is not a complete freedom. That's only a facade of a freedom, because the Egyptians will still chase after you. They have not really consented to the fact that you are free. And therefore the Eden themselves, in their own mind, also began to think, hey, this is not, we didn't make a complete break. And then was Kriyas Yamsuf, where they made a more total break with Mitzrayim. After Kriyas Yamsuf, everybody knows what Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea. When the Eden came out of the Red Sea, and the Egyptians drowned, and Eden saw that they were totally disassociated with the Egyptians. Now they were completely free. So there's an interesting expression there in the Torah, where it says, Vayasa Moshe es ha'om. That Moshe, Vayasa means he caused them to journey on. He kind of was forcing them out. Again, because we didn't feel anymore, we are completely rid of the Egyptians. We're completely free. They didn't feel anymore the impetus, the absolute necessity to go on. Where are we going? What's the point? And Moshe had to explain to them, no, this is not the end that we are going for. You are free of the Egyptians, but are you a nation? Do you have a Torah? Do you represent something? Do you stand for something? What is your life about? This is only the beginning of the journey. And so on throughout the sojourn, travel in a desert, a total of 42 different stops, 42 different encampments, where an encampment, as I said, means that we have reached a goal. And once we reach the goal, we no longer are aware that we want anything more. After a while at this place, after a while at this goal, then we first realize, but this is not the ultimate goal. There is really a higher place. There is a higher level that we have to reach. And this is how they journeyed. And ultimately they realized, and they came to the fullest recognition, that what they were after all along, even at the moment when they first left Mitzrayim, even though at that time the overwhelming force behind their leaving was they wanted to get out of bondage. This was the part of it that they were aware of, clearly aware. They actually experienced it daily. But what was really the underlying force? What were they really looking for? They were aiming for going to Eretz Yisrael. The original promise that Hashem gave, the message that Hashem gave to Moshe, that he should go and tell the Eden where they were still in Mitzrayim, was that Hashem wants to take you out of Mitzrayim and to take you into a different land, into a land that he promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. At that time, Eden couldn't really relate to it, couldn't hope for it, because they were so deeply in bondage. But this was the real aim. And when as they were journeying, they were re-examining themselves and recognizing that really this is not the true aim what they were looking for. At each step of the way, until they realized, this is what we're looking for. As a matter of fact, there was a break point. Because in Paran, when even in this camp, in one of these journeys, where the Meraglim were sent, the spies were sent into Eretz Yisrael, and they came back, and they dissuaded Eden from going to Eretz Yisrael. Which meant, in effect, we don't need anything more. We got what we want. We have a Torah. We are free of the Egyptians. We have a Torah. We have the man. We have the man, the food. We have the be'er. We have the water. We have our freedom to learn and to do Avodas Hashem. We don't want anything more. And what happened then? We all know what happened. That there was a gzeira, a decree coming out from Hashem, that the people that left Mitzrayim, those people that left Egypt, as a matter of fact, are not going to enter Eretz Yisrael. They cannot break away from it. They feel so deeply the change, the fact that they got rid of the bondage, and when they have gotten in Midbar, they don't feel the need. They don't feel the need of going to Eretz Yisrael. They don't want to go to Eretz Yisrael. And it was only the second generation of the people that came out of Mitzrayim that finally entered Eretz Yisrael, because they recognized that is the ultimate goal. What is the ultimate goal, so to speak, the end purpose, the end journey from Mitzrayim? The truth is that the end journey from Mitzrayim is when Eden finally entered Eretz Yisrael. And they transplanted the Mishkan, the tabernacle that traveled with them in the desert, in Eretz Yisrael. And it stood there, this tabernacle, this Mishkan, stood for over 300 years. They did not use the boards for the walls. They made, you learned in the Rambam, right? They made stone walls, and they threw the riyos, the curtains, on top of it. This was a mishkan. So this was a much more permanent edifice than the one that they had in the Midbar. What that meant was that Hashem's presence in the world was much more established, much more permanent than it was in the desert. But that still was not the ultimate aim, what Eden were looking for. The ultimate and end purpose was to establish a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. And once the Beis Hamikdash was established, then Hashem was permanently established in this world. Permanently in one place, never to move out of there. And that is when journeying has finished, so to speak. Journeying from Mitzrayim into the point where Hashem's presence was established fully in this world. This is a reflection of what takes place in the life of every Yid. Like I mentioned, the Baal Shem Tov says that correspondingly to the 42 journeys that Yidden had in the desert, every person goes through these 42 stages, journeys. What that means is that every person has a certain purpose, certain aim. At any given step, at any given stage of his life, he's only aware of the next step. And when he gets to the next step, he seems perfectly satisfied. Oh, that's exactly what I was looking for. I don't need anything more. After a while, when he gets established in this step, he realizes, no, this was only a stepping stone. This was only a step for further movement, because he does not have the fine lines, the fine concepts, the fine truth that he really is looking for. And therefore he's ready to make the next step. This is what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when he explains, Sheva Yipoil Tzadik V'kom. But even a Tzadik, even one who has reached the Madriga of a Tzadik, still has moments where he falls and rises up again. Why does he fall? He falls, the fall over there does not mean that he falls away and he loses interest in doing Torah mitzvahs. It means that if a day ago or a moment ago he felt that he has arrived, that he has really reached the point that he wants to reach, all of a sudden he realizes that's far from the truth. It's far from the real thing. In the parshas of this week, immediately after that Moshe recounts and lists all the steps that he took in the desert, there is another mitzvah where Eden are commanded, are told that you are going to be now crossing the Yarden to go into the land that Hashem promised to you. As you are crossing the Yarden, you should remember and bear in mind that you're crossing the Yarden with the intent of eradicating in Eretz Yisrael, eradicating every last vestige, every last commemoration, anything, any trace of any of the abominations, of any of the Avodah Zoras that were present in the land. That is the condition with which what you have to have in mind as you're crossing the yard. What are these abominations, these Avodah Zoras, in terms of a person's own life, in terms of a person's own journey? That as we are going towards our own Eretz Yisrael, and as we are going towards building our own Beis HaMikdash, ultimately each one builds his own Beis HaMikdash in his own heart and mind, and establishes Hashem's presence fully established and permanent, and as a means, as a process to getting there. He has to go through all of these journeys, and he has to eradicate all the abominations. What are the abominations that he has to eradicate? This is each in his individual life. Avodah Zorah, which means idol worship, in very simple terms. In fact, the word Avodah Zorah means strange service, strange worship. Strange means something that doesn't belong in the Jewish heart, something that doesn't belong in the Jewish mind. Doesn't necessarily mean idol. Anything that doesn't belong in the Jewish heart. The idol worshippers that the Torah tells us to eradicate their memory consisted of all kinds of structures. Some structures represented some imaginary things. Some structures pointed to the sun, some structures pointed to the moon, whatever it may be. What did they have in common? What is the general gist of this whole concept of Avodah Zarah? There were, as a matter of fact, if you go down to the very basics in Avodah Zarah, there were such strange concepts. Avodah Zarah, there were instances where somebody with that mindset would pick up a rock, set it up, and declare this as his God, and he would bow to the rock. Yeah.
They're shaped not just a normal stone.
What's behind it? What is the idea? What is the idea? I mean, after all, a human being. And in matter of fact, as we learn, we read about this, we understand, the Mephoshim talk about, they were not just plain stupid idiots. They had a philosophy behind it. They had a philosophy behind it. What's the basic philosophy? And if we examine our world, we'll see that the basic philosophy has not really dissipated. It has been translated in different fashions, in different ways. The basic philosophy is they saw what they observed, they saw the world, and they believed very strongly in the world that they observed. And when they examined the world, they saw there are various powers in the world, natural powers. And they paid attention to the various natural powers and say, oh, this is for real. And then they went down to the very basics. We spoke about it yesterday. They said, what is the basic building block? What is the most solid entity in the world?
Rock.
That is indestructible? The rock. Therefore, the rock is the real base, the very base, the real foundation of all existence. Foundation of their own existence. And they formulated all kinds of philosophies that, as a result of that, you can bow to the rock and you will be blessed with you will be given all kinds of powers, whatever it is. That's phony. I mean, that's already stupidity. But under these circumstances, you can formulate all kinds of ideas. But the basic thrust of it was, as a matter of fact, the Rambam describes the early advent of Avodah Zarah. How did it ever come into the world? Odem Orishain, the first man, he could not have any error. He was in Sir Kapos Al Kodesh Baruch, Hashem's handiwork. How did it develop? So the Rambam describes it quite clearly, and he said, in the days of Emish, which is the third generation from Odom, people started off by recognizing Hashem's handiwork. What a great creation, the sun. What a great creation, the moon. What a great creation, the stars. Whatever else they identified. The seas, the waters, whatever it is. And they became, so to speak, taken in by the wonders of all that. And they recognized in their scientific study, they recognized that, in fact, the sun has a tremendous effect on the world. That is really the source of all, the support of all life in the world. And therefore they turned around and they said, we have to give cognizance to the sun. And at first they said they had to give cognizance to the sun as an appreciation to Hashem for having created the sun. You have to give cognizance to the sun. And they illustrated it by the simple idea that if a king sends a messenger to you to bring you a message and to give you some direction, a king appoints a minister. That minister has to be recognized, has to be honored, because he represents the king. The son is a minister that Hashem appointed to serve the world, and therefore the son has to be recognized. And we can readily see how, in a short time, this can devolve into completely forgetting about Hashem and saying Hashem is someplace he's dissociated from the world. He has appointed ministers that handle all affairs of the world, such as the sun, the moon, stars, and we have to worship, we have to recognize these powers, and this is what Hashem wants. This is how the whole concept of it is already developed. And then, of course, it went further and further and devolved even lower. But the principle in this, there's a whole philosophy. The principle in this is the recognition of worldly powers as such unto themselves. What we are instructed, what we are taught, and what we understand is, yes, of course, there is the sun and the moon, but the sun and the moon have absolutely no say in what they do. This is Hashem's hand that created and creates the sun every instant, and moves the sun every instant, and plans out and directs all occurrences, all natural occurrences. Exactly, this is, so to speak, Hashem's presence in the world that is illustrated as enacted in this natural phenomenon. And therefore, there is no such thing as recognizing the natural phenomenon as such. It is only it's Hashem's hand, and we only recognize Hashem's presence. And hence, we can now readily understand that when the Torah says that when you enter Eretz Yisrael, as you are crossing the Yarden, just for those who are not aware, when you even crossed the Yarden, it was another reenactment of Kriyas Yamsuf. Because as a matter of fact, the water stopped and even crossed the Yarden in dry land. And therefore, they were told, as you're crossing the Yarden, you should know that you have to cross the Yarden with the intent that when you get there, you have every aim and every intent to eradicate every trace of Avodah Zarah. And if not, then you have no purpose of going there. And the waters of the Yarden will come down and just flow back. You're going to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to build a Beis Hamikdash and all that, but you have to know that in order to do that, the first thing you have to know that your ultimate aim is to eradicate every trace of Avodah Zarah. This is reflected back in our own journey. Each one of us is involved in a journey that Hashem set out for us. Each one of us was given his specific starting point, his specific Mitzrayim, and a specific path that he will make coming out of Mitzrayim until he reaches Eretz Yisrael and building Beis Hamikdash. And in this journey, he must, number one, remember that even though it would seem to him that his original aim, what he had originally identified as the reason for his moving out of Mitzrayim, wherever he finds himself, he already accomplished. He should know that that is a big mistake. He has accomplished, but as long as he hasn't reached Eretz Yisrael, as long as he hasn't reached the Beis Hamikdash, as long as he hasn't reached Beis Hamikdash, which means a permanent place in his heart and mind of Hashem, he hasn't really reached his aim. At every stage of this journey, he will mistakenly conceive that he has already freed himself. He is out. He's out of Mitzrayim. And for this the Torah says, what is the litmus test that you are out of Mitzrayim and that you have now reached Eretz Yisrael and that you have now built the Beis Hamikdash? The litmus test for this is not that you are free of the bondage of Mitzrayim. That happens in the first step. You broke away. You've accepted the Torah. You're learning Torah. You've accepted the mitzvahs. And you're now in the next generation, so to speak. You even consented to go further into Eretz Yisrael and to fight to conquer Eretz Yisrael. All of these aspects that even went through in the desert. What is the bottom line? What is the real litmus test? You know the litmus test? How does a person test himself to see that he is breaking away? How does he know for sure that he is out of Mitzrayim? Like we said before, one can be out of Mitzrayim and still be fearful of Mitzrayim. What are the Egyptians going to say? How are they going to look at me? Are they going to think that I'm crazy? I'm off my mind? Is that a concern for him? Is it possible for him to come and entice me back? Or make a compromise? What is the litmus test? The litmus test is whether we are prepared, even in aim, to eradicate every trace of Avodah Zarah. What is a trace of Avodah Zarah? You don't mean Chas v'Shalom Avodah Zarah in the literal sense. What we mean is an Avodah that is strange to a Yidden of Shomer Torah Mitzvah, a Yid who follows Torah Mitzvahs. If he gives credence, everybody knows what credence means, if he gives value, if he attributes value and power to natural forces, it may be, as so to speak, a stepping stone, but ultimately he has to know that his aim is to be completely and totally free of it. Mitzrayim, Chassidus explains what was the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim. What the Egyptians had Avodah Zarah. What did they worship? They worshipped the Nile. Literally, they worshipped the Nile. They construed the Nile as their god, because the Nile, as a matter of fact, was a source of their sustenance. It would rise up at the proper time of the year and would water their fields. Mitzrayim does not have rain season. The Nile rises up till this day and waters their fields. And as a result, this was their worship in Nile. What does that mean? Essentially, the power of nature represented by the Nile, this was their worship. And for this they erected all kinds of monuments and so forth, recognizing the blessing that they had from the Nile. The Eden jumping away from Mitzrayim. And Eden, the Jewish people, jumping away, tearing themselves away from Mitzrayim. And as it says, that, as a matter of fact, when Eden had to leave Mitzrayim, they had to actually forcibly tear themselves out of it. It was not an easy step. Because after all, fact is fact. The Nile does rise up and does water the fields. And if you follow, so to speak, the natural trend of the world, you'll be successful. It seems, look around. That seems to be still the reality. And it's very enticing and it's very grabbing. And in order for the Eden to make their first step, as it says, they had to actually literally tear themselves away from there. The Medrash says, and the Foshim bring it down, that as a matter of fact, the last half a year that Eden were in Mitzrayim, they were no longer under bondage. They were no longer subservient, they no longer worked. They were free. During this half a year, Eden began to occupy high government offices. They were recognized by the Egyptians for their wisdom, for their talents. Huh?
Did you say the last year?
The last half a year. They were no longer, they were recognized. They were honored. As I mentioned before, that they even were now looked favorably and respectfully by the Egyptians. And therefore, for them to leave this place, to leave Egypt, meant a real challenge, a real test. And what was the test? The test was not, do you want freedom or bondage? The test was, can you free yourself from the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim? And what was the Korban Pesach? It says that the Eden came out of Mitzrayim b'schus, with the merit of the Korban Pesach. Now, the first Korban Pesach they made in Mitzrayim. I'm sure you know that, right? The first Korban Pesach, the Korban Pesach was made on the 14th of Nisan, and that night, the 15th, that's when they left Mitzrayim. So, what was the meaning of the Korban Pesach? Because the Korban Pesach consisted of them taking a sheep. The sheep was also symbolic of the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim. And they shechted it. In other words, the whole process of getting out of Mitzrayim and starting their journey towards Matan Torah, towards Eretz Yisrael, towards building Beis Hamikdash, started from shechting the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim. And it was not such an easy decision. And this is why it's considered tremendous merit. I was saying, this merit, that's why they were taken out of Mitzrayim. But they had to recognize that even though the Egyptians seemed to be very successful, and they recognized all the natural forces that were instrumental in making them successful, still they were able to see through it. They were able to break away from it and say, that is not the truth, that is not what I'm looking for. That's not the success I'm looking for. I'm looking for success that comes directly from Hashem, and not success that comes exclusively from the powers of nature. This principle is really a tremendous challenge to every individual person, and to every bocher, and to every bocher here in this issue. Because in this yeshiva, more than in the, so to speak, the regular yeshiva, every one of us here is in the middle of a journey of breaking away from where he was. He's not, so to speak, in a peaceful movement. He's not moving around within Eretz Yisrael. He's breaking away from Mitzrayim, and he knows very well what Mitzrayim looks like. And he knows that it's very enticing, very successful. But with that, he was able to see, while being in that realm of success, that this is not the life that he can possibly live. Why? Because underneath it all, it is Avodah Zarah. It is blinding him to a natural view, to say that the world is a natural presence, and he can't acquiesce to that. That's not what a Yid is. And therefore, this was a tremendous challenge to break away from that and say, no, I'm going to go to yeshiva and I'm going to learn what the Torah is about. And then we have to remember that there are 42 separate stops. And at each one of these stops, he may mistakenly think that he has already arrived. He fully understands what it's about. Just like Eden in the desert had to go through these steps, and sometimes Moshe Rabbeinu had to give him pradamon, and sometimes there were those who he failed and remained in the desert. Rahman al-Islam. We start on this journey and we break away from Mitzrayim. We have to remember there is, as the Yidden travel through the desert from place to place, you know that what was their guiding light? How did they know where to go? There was the heavenly cloud that's surrounding them. And as they were supposed to start on a new trip, on a new journey, the cloud would stand up as a pillar over the Shevet Yehuda. He knew that now it's time to go. And as they were traveling and following this cloud, when the cloud would straighten out as a tent, they knew that this is the place to stop. This is how they travel. All of these things reflect themselves in our lives. When we go, we follow the heavenly cloud. We don't know exactly where we're going. We can't shut it out exactly. If we shut it out exactly, then we have not broken away from Egypt, from Mitzrayim. We still think that within the context of the world, we know how to adjust our lives so that I'll be, living a normal life. Breaking away from Mitzrayim, breaking away from the powers of nature, breaking away from the success, so to speak, of the natural world, means breaking away and not having a natural perspective of where you're going, perspective. Where are you going? Have an insight. There is a heavenly cloud, there's a Torah, there is a neshama, and I know I know that I'm in the direction I'm going. I don't know where it's leading me to. This is the secret to success in learning Torah.
Learning Torah.
Right. Just want to. You know that children. You remember your question. There's an interesting phenomenon. When children learn, for some reason, they absorb what they learn completely. And not only this absorption actually is reflected in the child himself. How they grow with it. It's not just that they know something. With everything that they learn, they actually live with it, they actually grow with it. And we look at a child, a young child, 7, 8, 9, every year is a different child. You can recognize him. His intelligence develops, his whole perception of things develops. Why? Because the child has this special quality. He learns without charting a path for himself. He doesn't set limit what I'm going to learn. He learns what he is being taught. He learns with an open mind. And that's why it seeps in. And it has a tremendous, and it grows with it. This is symbolic of the heavenly cloud that Eden followed in the desert. Hashem said that this journey from Mitzrayim into Eretz Yisrael, that every one of us has to go through, is a journey that depends on several factors. Like I said, the decision and the going on and so forth, but one other important factor. The important factor is that as I'm going from step to step, I don't know where it's leading me. I only know this is this is the direction I have to follow the cloud. I have to follow the Torah, I have to follow the directive as it comes out from the Torah. Where it's going to end up, I will see. Because now I don't know. I'm going to a place that I don't know. Why don't I know? Because I'm not up to that place. I'm ready to move out from here. Where it's going to lead, I'm going to still see. This is such an important aspect in our success here. If we sit in judgment, everything that we learn, am I interested to learn this or not? We are precluding the effect and the success of our journey. On the other hand, if we allow ourselves to follow, so to speak, the heavenly cloud, where the Torah leads us, then we reach the next step. Vayisu, vayachnu. Vayisu means they journeyed. Vayachnu, and they reached a resting place. That's when they reached a place and say, I see what I got. It's a new view. My eyes open up. And after a while, when this becomes, so to speak, natural, and this becomes habitual, I'm ready to journey further. Where it's going to take me, I don't know. But I travel. And as I travel, if I follow the lead, then he can recognize, I see what happens. So, in a nutshell, and in brief, you have to understand, each one of us has a long and very involved in background, previous experiences, previous education, previous knowledge. And from that, we come here and we say, okay, I came here because I wanted to know such and such, which I have identified before I came here. It's fine. But we have to understand that this is what you identified before you came here. Because from there you also saw, oh, I'm missing this. While you're in Mitzrayim, you know you want to get out of Mitzrayim. But you had no idea what Matan Torah is, what Kabbalah Torah is, what going into Eretz Yisrael is, what building Beis Hamikdash is. You had no idea of that. You have to know that even though you had no idea of it, but the real force that forced you in the first place to break away from Mitzrayim, inherent in that, deep down in your heart and deep down in your mind, was the aim and the desire to build a Beis Hamikdash. There is no way that you can be aware of it, but that is what's inherent in the Jewish heart. That is what is inherent in the true Jewish soul. And this is what ultimately forced you out from where you were. Stopping the movement at any time is possible, because it seems like Vayachanu, that I've come to a resting place. But that is what the Torah says, not the path, not the pattern that brings Eden ultimately to Eretz Yisrael. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, that the Meraglim stayed in the desert together with their whole generation. The spies. Yes, your question.
In practical words, I got the whole entire speech, at least temporarily, but hopefully permanently. But you said, in practical words, you said that basically we have to constantly use the Torah as our guide. Is that in the shortened version?
The short version is that we have to learn, with Hashem's help, that which is being taught with full diligence, not judging, oh, this is important, this is not important. This I like, this I don't like. Whatever is being taught, whatever the Torah teaches, that we have to absorb it completely. Because we have to be guided, so to speak, by the light of the Torah, just like a child follows his Rebbe, open-mindedly, he doesn't question him. So too we follow whatever it says in the Gemara, right? We learn this Mishnah, oh, I'm interesting, oh, this is not interesting. No, everything is a source of life for us. Every word. And with this approach, we actually continue to move from station to station until we reach the ultimate goal of crossing the Yarden and building the Beis Hamikdash. And the Beis Hamikdash, as I mentioned before, we each have to, this is a clear statement, a clear aim, that God's presence has to be established in our minds and hearts permanently, without a moment of doubt, without a moment of question. Like in Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, never to move out.
I just want to know how to verbalize it. Why does the factor of diligence, right, and not choosing, why is this essential
for two reasons. Number one, because your choice is made on the basis of the limits where you are. And we are trying to break away from those limits. Right? And the other is that as long as you are judging, as long as you don't allow yourself, since this is a new step that you don't understand, you don't know yet, if you don't allow that to be fed you won't know what it's about. In other words, you will understand it with the same approach that you understood yesterday's teaching. But today you have to have a different approach.
By basically not choosing something, you're not saying, I don't want to take this step.
That's right.
Okay.
And in conclusion, I want to wish, like we always do, to each one of us 100% success to break away from Mitzrayim and go through the journey. This is the Ben Hamtzorim, the 3 weeks as we spoke last time. It's a very good time to free ourselves of the Golus and get rid of all the quote-unquote Avodah Zorah, strange aspects in our mind, things that are strange to purity of Torah, and aim and hopefully accomplish to building a personal Beis HaMikdash, have a clarity of vision in our own minds, what we are and where Hashem is, and ultimately be mizakeh the whole world with it.